Welcome into Pro Baseball Today here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish along with Tom Vecchio. We're approaching the All-Star break. More than half of the baseball season is officially in the books, and the sprint to the second half is about to begin. Thanks for joining us and watching us here on SportsGrid Network, covering Major League Baseball, of course, throughout the summer. Tom, happy July 4th holiday. Hope you had a nice holiday weekend, and we're raring to go here. And what do we got here? About a week to go before we get the All-Star break.
Yes, same to you. Happy July 4th. You know, we had the official halfway point of the MLB season. Now we have the unofficial halfway point. The next mile marker coming up would be the trade deadline. There's a lot to get to between all-star starters, different, goings on with teams, the trade deadline, as I mentioned. There's a lot to talk about.
And we'll get to all of the All-Stars, who's in, who's out, and hit it all for you throughout the show. Of course, we'll break it all down for you as well. Let's start off with some teams that could be potentially moving players and adding players, and that's really the discussion once baseball starts back up in the unofficial, official second half. Will the Mets make some moves? Well, of course, their owner this week, very vocal, doing an interview with the New York Post, talking about the disappointment in the season. Hasn't been a disappointing season at all offensively for Juan Soto. And Tom, he's still one of the best players in baseball offensively. He's been fantastic. But as far as his relationship goes and inside that clubhouse, still remains to be seen. In fact, he told a reporter this week that there were no issues at all last year with Francisco Lindor, no beef. Their relationship is getting better and it takes time. And also says, quote, when you meet a girl, you don't start kissing her right away. Wow, didn't see that quote coming, but I guess we could stick to the on-the-field stuff. I mean, as far as Soto is concerned, Tom, he's having a great year, sometimes, he's going to let the ball drop in front of him, and then guys are going to run all the way around the bases. He's not a great defender. But when the Mets signed this deal, they didn't think that Juan Soto would be culpable for the record that they have. I don't think that he is. It's basically everybody around him.
At a certain point, I was just assuming that Soto would become the full-time DH anyway. So you weren't buying into him being some stout defender for the entirety of his contract. And to your point, he's doing his part. He really is. Granted, he's been on and off the IL. He's missed some games this season, whatever it might be at the beginning portion. But really, he is living up to the contract that they signed him to. He's producing offensively. The pitching has been the majority of the issue. The infielding errors are not his fault. Yeah, granted, again, he's not amazing defensively, but it's really a team effort in baseball. We say this all the time. We have seen MVP seasons from teams that are absolutely terrible and vice versa, great teams that have horrible players on them. Soto has done his part. They need a major overhaul. They need a systemic change for the Mets into the offseason. They need better pitching. They need a clear effort when it comes to fielding and defense. And I don't think Juan Soto really has any issues or should have any problems with them making major changes around him because it's not his fault at this point.
No, it's not. And defensively, you're right that they thought they were getting better on defense, but Simeon's been hurt. First base has been a mess. It just hasn't worked out for the Mets, and I'm sure that anything that is not tied down long-term is going to be moved next month. All right, Jacob Mizorowski, meanwhile, continues to cruise. He and Christopher Sanchez are just neck and neck for this Cy Young Award. The 270 fastest pitches thrown by baseball starters this year are all by Jacob Mizorowski. He's getting close here, Tom, to 107 miles an hour. I guess in 4 or 5 years from now, 110 is going to be the normal here. The Miz is in a class of his own with all of this stuff, but I still wonder how this is sustainable to throw this hard as a human being, not just as a player, as a human being. It's crazy.
I keep thinking about that, about where his ceiling is potentially going to be headed over the next few years. And, due to that, Craig, I keep wondering about what that contract is going to look like for him and how many years it's going to be, how much money he's going to be potentially getting. I think it's fair to say that historically speaking, or at least in recent times, the Brewers aren't a team that are going to be shelling out massive contracts to players, but he deserves every bit of money that he would possibly get. So when we see him putting up these numbers, and realistically, I could say it's fair to say that he's going to be competing, not he might, he's going to competing for the NL Cy Young every single year. What is that contract going to look like? Because if he can sustain this even to some of this level, he has to be there and he has to be getting paid. That's what I'm really thinking about when it comes to Mizorowski and what the Brewers are going to do with him.
Yeah, they're running out of time to get that done, and the Brewers have not been bullish on signing pitchers long-term. You saw they bid farewell to Peralta and of course Corbin Burns a couple of years ago as well. All right, meanwhile, as we approach the trade deadline, the Washington Nationals are going to have to make a decision as to whether or not they're going to try and stay in this for the wild card. It seems like they're probably a year ahead of operating business, but they did make a great signing in the offseason. And boy, for all of August and September, Foster Griffin is going to look good either in a Nationals uniform or he's going to look good in somebody else's uniform. I'm not really sure which way this is going to go, because I feel like the Nats owe it to their fans a little bit to fight. It's been a while, of course, since they won that World Series, and they've just been a shell of everything since. Most games with 5 innings pitched and 1 fewer earned run. Griffin is with Schlittler and Mizorowski. And look, this was just a very shrewd signing by their front office. You could see that they, turned a lot over in the offseason. They're trying to find the diamonds in the rough. They found one here. Tom, this is and I know the new CBA, they're looking to move up the trade deadline into July. But when you have the trade deadline in the first week of August, I mean, as we sit here on July 5th or whenever you're watching the show, we still don't know who's in it and who's out. We got a long way to go.
It really is. A couple things. Credit to the Nats to making a good signing, good developmental staff and the pitching staff, keeping him going throughout the season. I think those things are important. But if they're not going to be in it, and listen, they're only 3 games back of the wild card. Like, that's not some massive thing that they need to overcome between now and the actual trade deadline at the beginning of August. If they're going to be in it, he's a piece that you want. Now, he's not going to be some front end starter for a team that's winning their division, but he's a competent guy that can eat innings, that can give you 5 innings and only 1 or 2 earned runs. That's something that any playoff bound team would want. But also, to your point, they're in the race right now. And a month from now, I think that's when they need to make the decision. Because if they don't need to make a decision right now, I would say wait on it, get a couple more starts out of him, and see where the market is at that point. Because if there's teams willing to go all chips to the middle, they're going to want a player like Foster Griffin.
The Giants are in a different position. We know where they stand. They're going to be building for the future. It feels like every year they've been doing this, and they have a couple of names of players that could be potentially on the move. The first is obvious one. He signed a 1-year deal. That's Luis Arias. He has gone 76 straight plate appearances without a strikeout. He's having a great year, but what really has changed for him, Tom, is we always knew that he was going to hit 300 and get 180 to 200 hits, but he's playing really good defense at second base this season. Ron Washington came in as their infield coach, and he has been fantastic for him. But if you talk about players, like I don't know what Arias is going to add to a playoff team. Honestly, he's going to get hits, and that's probably what he's going to do. But beyond that, Tom, he's going to get moved. Like, this is the easiest name to just look at, say, a 1-year contract, and then he ends up hitting first or second for some team trying to chase down a playoff spot.
Right, and ultimately, I think that he brings a little bit of utility to a playoff bound team. That's ultimately what he's played first in his career, so they can move him there. He can get on base. They can use him as a pinch hitter late in games, whatever it might be. I think that's ultimately what the Giants should be looking to do. The Giants are, as you said, a bit of a mess right now, and they have multiple players that they should be looking to move, get rid of. I know Matt Chapman's name keeps coming up. I know he's out right now. No one's going to take the Devers contract, Craig, but they got to move as many players as they possibly can.
Yeah, Logan Webb would be one of those players you would think, but Buster Posey, he's going to have to either walk back what he said, or Webb is not going to be moved. I still think, by the way, this would be a fantastic postseason pitcher for somebody, Tom. But I know he's had a tough start to the month, but I'd take him any day. Put him in as my number 2 starter in my playoff rotation, maybe even my 1. I still think he's a great pitcher. Giants making a mistake, by the way, just not listening on everybody. Makes no sense.
Right. Logan Webb is a frontline starter for any team. You could put him as the number 2, if not the number 1. Obviously, he's not going to be the number 1 if we're talking about the Phillies or something. Maybe he'd start behind Cam Schlittler on the Yankees or the Brewers. But he's a frontline starter for 75% of the teams in the major leagues. He has not a ton of postseason experience, but you need a player that can get deep into games, limit the hard contact, get the ball down, and limit damage. And that's what you want in the postseason. And that's what Webb brings. These recent starts don't mean anything.
All right, we'll take a quick break here on Pro Baseball Today. We come back next time to dive into the All-Star game in Philadelphia. We know who's in. We know who's starting. Also, a player opts out already. We're going to see a lot of this, of course, as we continue. You're watching Pro Baseball Today here on SportsGrid. Craig Mish, Tom Vecchio. Happy July 4th weekend. We'll be back after these messages.
The older players in the WNBA going, hey, man, we were here when they were paying us nothing. We were here when we had to go overseas to make a paycheck. You're walking in here, you don't realize how easy you have it. So there is some of that too. But yeah, Jordan got beaten up. Magic got beaten up. Bird got beaten up. Kareem got beaten up. You know, Wemby is getting beaten up, by the way.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio. Only on SportsGrid.
This is the third time he's been medically checked. Even the refs coming over. He's like, dude, like come on. Like after every sort of play in front of the net, the kind of goal he's done.
Yeah.
He's
stop jumping.
He's on the turf, like you said, like he's like driving off the top rope. Look at him here again. I give him credit. He's freaking fearless.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Their pitching has been really good in their bullpen, too. So Chris Getz, their general manager, credit to him. You know, this guy was getting pounded a couple of years ago for decisions and everything like that, but man, it is seemingly working out. The fans, by the way, all of a sudden are pouring in there. Their attendance is on the rise, too. So a great sign that the White Sox are in this thing. Now, long term, I don't know. Like, is this a postseason team? Is it a deep postseason team?
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
Welcome back to Pro Baseball Today. The Midsummer Classic is coming faster than you think. In fact, it's a week from Tuesday in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. They'll play the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, and over the weekend we found out the players who will be participating, or at least announced, because you know by the time that this game throws out the first pitch on Tuesday night, there's going to be a lot of changes here. But we'll go through at least the potential players who could be playing in the game. We'll start off with the National League. And certainly the National League has been the better of the two leagues this season. No huge surprises here. I think that maybe at the beginning of the year, if I would have told you, Tom, that some of the reserves would include Andy Pages, or even the starters would include Andy Pages, you would have been shocked. I mean, that's the kind of year he's having for the Dodgers. Brandon Marsh is having what you would call a breakout year for the Philadelphia Phillies. And, you know, to me, not huge surprises. You know, some folks are upset with the voting process. How can Ozzie Albies be the starting second baseman? He's not having a great year. I mean, it's a popularity contest. I don't complain about this stuff because I know that when people watch the game, they want to see who they voted for. That's it. I mean, it's not going to change unless they want to change the process. Sure. But until that happens, you're getting the most votes. You're starting in the game. That's it.
It is really that simple. Again, we can make the case that some of the players shouldn't be there. You know, I can make the case that I think Sal Stewart was a better third baseman compared to Max Muncy this year. You know, we're talking about 20 plus, roughly 20 more RBIs compared to Muncy. I like to make the case that Ozzie Albies shouldn't be there. It should be Bryce Terang. It should be Xavier Edwards. It could even be Rise. It could, Weatherholt. It could be a lot of, Ketel Marte. Like, we go down the list. But again, it's a popularity contest. If this is the process, and this is what we have in front of us, people are going to vote for it. This is who they ultimately want to see. Those players are going to be there. Now, great, like I said, some of them are going to opt out, and it's not all going to be the exact same thing. But, this is what we have right now. We got to go with it.
Yeah, the reserves is where they can clean up the process a little bit. And naturally, one player from each team is going in. And so that's where you get some of these players, especially when you look at guys like Hunter Goodman, who's having a great year and he deserves to be in. But just a reminder that the Rockies will put one player in. It will be Goodman. William Contreras is also in the All-Star game. Otto Lopez of Miami is a first-time All-Star. Pete Crow Armstrong has been arguably baseball's best player for 2 months. Imagine if he was at the beginning of the season where he would have been. So really good job, I think, getting the right players in. James Wood, Kyle Schwarber. We're going to wait and see as to whether or not Schwarber or Harper participate in Home Run Derby on Monday night. That will be the big question as of now, Tom. I would expect at least one of the two Phillies to participate in this.
Yeah, you would want to see it just from a perspective of the fans and the pomp and circumstance that they're going to have. You want to have a hometown guy in there every single year, or as much as possible. At least there's a deserving player of it. So I think it should be Schwarber. I think that's just the natural home run guy that should be there for the Phillies. I think it's that simple. He wants to play. He should be there. I'm not going to say you have to push him to be there, but I want to see one of them there.
All right, and the all-star starting pitchers in the National League, no big surprises. I suppose it'll be Sanchez starting the game in Philadelphia, but maybe it'll be Mizorowski. I'll be surprised if Paul Skeens pitches or even goes to this game, to be honest. Just with the run that he's on here, it seems like he could use a break, but we'll see. Chris Sale, Yamamoto, Burns, Max Meyer, Mason Miller, Duran, Iglesias, Eduardo Rodriguez, and then Logan Webb. So to me, a job well done here. Maybe not as many relief pitchers as you would normally see on a team like this. But again, you're going to have drop-offs here, Tom. There's going to be players unavailable because they're pitching next weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and then they'll be replaced with others.
Yeah, this is a really good list. Happy to see Chase Burns on there. He's had a really fantastic season, a little bit under the radar compared to some of the heavyweights in the NL, but he went head-to-head with Mizorowski last week, came away with the win. So to see some of the younger pitchers stepping up, I think is great. And like you said, this list is going to change just because they're going to pitch Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they're just not going to be available.
In the American League, we'll see the health of Shea Langoliers. He's the starting catcher, but he hasn't played this weekend. I'm not sure what's going on with him. They brought up another catcher, did the A's this weekend. So maybe he's in, maybe he's out. We'll see. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Thanked the fans last night for voting him in, but he will not play or attend the All-Star game this season. So that means Nick Kurtz will start at first base. Ernie Clement, Junior Caminero will start at third. He'll also be in the home run derby. Then you have Witt. Trout will be a question mark for this game, obviously. Buxton, Judge won't play, and Alvarez. So, fans get so upset, Tom, when these names come out, and then you look at that and you say, I could see 3 or 4 names that aren't even going to be in this game. So we'll have so many changes before it all gets started.
Yeah, this is the process. I think there should be some type of process that incorporates the fan vote plus manager vote or GM vote, whatever you want to call it. But we're going to see players that just can't physically play, whether it's Trout or Judge, whomever it might be on either roster. They're just not going to play. Vladdy is taking a little bit of a different course. Obviously, Shane Langoliers is a newer injury, but the Vladdy story, I'm fine with this. I think this is a good step for a player just to say, I'm not up to it. I'm not feeling that I deserve of it, whatever it might be, that he just doesn't want to be there and he doesn't deserve, or he doesn't think he deserves to be there.
Guerrero will take some time off and then return to the Blue Jays. Here are the All-Star reserves, including first-time All-Star Travis Bazzana of the Cleveland Guardians. Also involved in the game, Dylan Dingler, Ben Rice, Miguel Vargas having a breakout season for the White Sox, Randy Arozarena, Bellinger, Riley Green, Tampa Bay gets their All-Star, and Yandy Diaz. Feels like Tampa Bay should have 5 All-Stars. I think they ended up getting 3, though, with Rasmussen and Baker, if I'm not mistaken. Brian Baker, right. That's the other one as well. Let's take a look at the pitchers also, Sam. Let's flip it over to that. Schlittler, Cease, Joe Ryan, Parker Messick. Hey, Boston put somebody in the All-Star game, right? They got to do it. Ranger Suarez, Drew Rasmussen, Michael Wacha's an All-Star, Louis Varland, Cade Smith, Baker, Aroldis Chapman, and then Texas's All-Star this season is left-handed reliever Jacob Latz. So, again, we'll find out who's starting next weekend, and then these names will change as well.
Yeah, I think it's a good list. I think, at face value, I think the NL pitchers are a little bit better, but it's good to see a mix of, young pitchers, young players, whether it be a Bazzana and a Messick from Cleveland. They're getting their, time in the spotlight. We're going to see some veteran pitchers a la Joe Ryan. How much longer is he going to be on the Twins, as we've discussed? But I think it's a good mix. As of now, I would say that the NL certainly has a bit of an edge when it comes to pitching, at least.
Yeah, definitely. I also mentioned another Red Sox, Aroldis Chapman, but probably just a Red Sox for now. I don't know where he's going to end up maybe in, let's say, 20, 30 days from now. But we get to this time of the year, Tom, the other thing that could happen is as soon as we get out of the break, players get traded. But there's a lot of discussion because of the CBA and everything surrounding it. Those bigger contracts may have to wait.
Yeah, certainly have to wait. And teams are going to be hesitant. Some teams are going to be willing to go all in. We're going to have everything, up, down, left, right, and center to find out what teams are willing to do as it lead into the deadline.
All right, we'll take a break and come back with hot players in baseball. You're watching Pro Baseball Today. Don't go away. Welcome back to Pro Baseball Today here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish along with Tom Vecchio here on the show. Let's go through some hot players in baseball, Tom, and start off with the Washington Nationals. They continue to hover around 500, a little bit above, seemingly ahead of schedule. And Luis Garcia, who, I mean, if you watch the Nationals every day, I mean, I watch baseball every day. I mean, you could find Luis Garcia batting first or second or ninth. You just don't know. They bat him all over the place. Very analytically driven squad at this point, and Garcia having a nice year.
Really, really fun to see from a certain perspective when it comes to Nats. They make sweeping changes in the offseason, new manager, new GM that are very young and, like you said, very analytically driven to this point. They're going to mix and match players and positions and lineups. They're going to change things, and frankly, it's working. They are scoring a ton of runs, but they're also giving up a ton of runs, and sometimes they're slugging their way to 10-8 wins, and they're also going to be losing those games. But it's good to see that they have pieces that can at least do pieces of this. They have great hitters, they have some great pitchers. It's about refining it. And you keep saying that they are maybe a year or so ahead of schedule, which I agree with. Do they want to go chips to the middle and push for a playoff spot, or do they say, what, we have some good pieces, let's try and maybe add one or two, subtract one or two that we're not going to be able to keep long term, and then build to the future starting next year?
Future is now for the Tampa Bay Rays, and Junior Caminero was on some incredible June run, that's for sure. He's already up to 26 home runs on the season. I remember doing shows at the beginning of the year, and the question mark would be, hey, they're not playing anymore outdoors in Tampa in that hot weather in Steinbrenner Field. Boy, that was a fallacy, huh? Caminero's having a better year than he had last year. 26 home runs, 57 runs driven in. Every time he goes on the road, he's putting on a show in batting practice because he's going to participate in the home run derby. And I would say, Tom, once they announce the field, and again, we won't know for sure, I would almost guarantee the favorite to win that derby is going to be Junior Caminero coming up a week from Monday.
Yeah, that's a good point. Same for me. Beginning of the season, I wasn't super high on his, draft position for fantasy baseball. It's like, he's going to be playing in a completely different park. How much can we take of last year? Could he do 70, 80% of what he did last year? He'd still have a great year, but I just didn't know if he'd be reaching those ceilings. And to this point, he's kind of blowing that all out of the water, where he's having an unbelievable year. Park factor be damned. It doesn't matter. They're the back indoors in a great pitcher's park. It's great to see a young player that a team can really build around year in and year out, be a 30, 35 home run guy at a floor, really.
Let's focus again here on Foster Griffin of the Washington Nationals, who has been one of baseball's hottest pitchers end of June into July. As we discussed, the Nationals will have to make a decision. But, quite frankly, Tom, I think it's a pretty easy one. When you have a player that's on an expiring contract, you better be sure that you have a legitimate shot, not just to get in the wild card, but maybe even win the division, or you could be sitting on a player that you get nothing for him. So, I'll go 60-40 that they move Griffin come next month.
I would go even a step further. You said, be sure you can get into the wild card. I would say be sure you can get into the wild card and you can re-sign him. Like, if he's on an expiring contract, if this is a player that you want around, yeah, you want him this year, but hey, he's good. Let's keep him. Let's re-sign him. Let's have him part of this growth for the next few seasons. So to me, sometimes it's a twofold process where you got to have both pieces. And if you can't guarantee that second piece that you're going to be able to resign him, even for just 3 or 4 years, you might as well move him, granted with the CBA and everything going on.
Trevor Rogers, pitcher of the Baltimore Orioles. Try and figure out this guy. Good luck. It started off horrible, came back, went on the injured list. Bizarre. It wasn't even, I don't think he was hurt. I think he had the flu or something. I don't know. Like, this is a guy that was sort of perplexing in Miami. Same thing is going on here in Baltimore. Last 3 starts, he looks exactly like the guy he was last year, Tom. But I just don't know what to make of Trevor Rogers in Baltimore at this point.
I really don't either, because he was great last year and he comes into this year and we're seeing terrible starts from 6, 7, 8 earned runs over 3 innings. He's getting hit around. The strikeouts aren't there. The home runs are being allowed by him that they weren't there last year. And we're just not sure what we're going to get. But he seemingly turned the corner. I don't know if it was a bit of a dead arm thing from him where he just needed some time off to, rest and recuperate and then be back out there. But the Orioles are sitting 3.5 games back out of the wild card. This is the type of pitcher that they need. And if they're not going to keep him, I'm not going to say he's going to be a frontline guy for a playoff-bound team, but a playoff bound team would want him to say, listen, can you give us 4 or 5 innings and then we turn it over the bullpen for a few? At least he's going to be in this type of form. So if the Orioles aren't going to make a push, this is a player I think they need to move.
Still arbitration eligible, but we'll get a big pay raise at the end of the season if things continue, and the Orioles have to make some key decisions. And the thing for the Orioles, too, is you have to wonder, honestly, Tom, who's making those decisions at this point? I mean, Mike Elias, who, came on the scene, I thought did a fantastic job with drafting and developing and getting everybody onto the club, but they never really went all the way in. And now all of a sudden it feels like they're on the other side of the mountain as opposed to the way up. It feels like they're on the way down. What will happen in Baltimore? I don't know. All right, coming up next, we'll go through some of the hot teams in baseball, including Tampa Bay and Philadelphia. We'll show you exactly what they've done and how they did it. You're watching Pro Baseball Today. We'll be right back.
Older players in the WNBA going, hey man, we were here when they were paying us nothing. We were here when we had to go overseas to make a paycheck. You're walking in here, you don't realize how easy you have it. So there is some of that too. But yeah, Jordan got beaten up. Magic got beaten up. Bird got beaten up. Kareem got beaten up. Wemby is getting beaten up, by the way.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio. Only on SportsGrid.
This is the 3rd time he's been medically checked. Even the refs coming over. He's like, dude, like come on. Like after every sort of play in front of the net, the kind of goal he's done. He's
stop jumping.
He's on the turf, like you said, like he's like driving off the top rope. Look at him here again. I give him credit. He's freaking fearless.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Pitching has been really good in their bullpen too. So Chris Getz, their general manager, credit to him. This guy was getting pounded a couple of years ago for decisions and everything like that, but man, it is seemingly working out. The fans, by the way, all of a sudden are pouring in there. Their attendance is on the rise too. So a great sign that the White Sox are in this thing. Now, long term, I don't know. Like, is this a postseason team? Is it a deep postseason team?
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Pro Baseball Today here on SportsGrid. The combination of one team in the East getting hot, American League, and one team going cold has changed the landscape once again of the division. Currently, the Tampa Bay Rays, the favorite to win the American League East because of a great week that they had and a poor week that the Yankees had. In fact, Tampa Bay swept the Kansas City Royals, who are going to be playing for the future at this point. What a horrible season for them. Friday also took care of Houston. They had the rubber game on Sunday. So you can only play who's put in front of you, Tom, but they got the Royals, and they got 3 relatively easy wins against them. And the Rays are just kind of being who they are. It's not like they're going to win 110 games or anything like this, Tom, but they just waited and waited and waited it out and won a little bit. And then the Yankees fell apart like they usually do in June and July. And here the Rays are again leading the division.
Yeah, we spoke about this last week when we had a segment on the predictive markets talking about who would you buy into, and it's not about buying yes on the Yankees, it'd be about buying yes on the Rays. And it's kind of what we've seen, at least through a small sample size, where they're just doing their thing. They're getting timely hitting, they're getting good pitching, they're getting good bullpen with Brian Baker we spoke about. In the All-Star game, they have the power, they can get on base, they steal bases with Chandler Simpson, like you name it. They're kind of checking off all the boxes. Now, I think everyone would say like there are teams that do the things that they do better to an extreme, but those teams, when they're not consistent with those things in terms of power, such as the Yankees, then they fall off a cliff. So the Rays do things really well and really just stable. And that's what always makes them a threat to make the playoffs. No one gives them a chance year in and year out, but they're always going to be there.
Yeah, and they're going to be there this year, probably making the playoffs. We'll see if they win the division. Of course, the Yankees still play the Rays a bunch in the second half. All right, so the Phillies are in prime position for a wild card. The Braves have been very uneven, to say the least, in the last few weeks, and so there is that question as to whether or not Philly can catch them and move ahead. They took care of the Pirates early in the week, won 2 out of 3 there, or excuse me, they split that series there, and then ended up beating the Royals on July 4th. And the Phillies have a couple of things, I think, to fix, Tom, before the postseason. One of them is probably one more starter, I would guess. They've been tinkering with starter 4 and 5. Remember, Walker is now gone, and Painter is now in the minor leagues. So Dave Dombrowski, he's going to get aggressive and help this team out. So I think Philadelphia making that move at manager, it ended up working. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Hasn't worked in Boston, probably won't work in New York. It has worked in Philadelphia. Stabilize the situation there. And now Philly probably headed to the postseason. But it'll be the same question with them as it is every year. Can they get over the top? Can they win a series? Can they win a wild card series? Can they get to the World Series?
I would say that winning the division is certainly not out of the question as of now. The Braves at a certain point, they had an 8.5, 9-game lead. That's down to 3 games, at least as of July 5th. Like, they are just treading water, I think is the best way to put it for the Braves. But the Phillies are surging. And given the comments that we saw from Dombrowski and some of the offseason nonsense that we saw, at least leading into spring training, this is a team I keep wondering, how many more chances are they going to have? How many more at-bats are they going to have in the postseason without truly getting over the hump? They really do need to make splashy plays at the deadline to push this team to the next step. And starting pitching is going to be the priority for that.
Yeah, they do have Wheeler, of course. They do have Luzardo, and they do have Sanchez. But if they're going to win a 7-game series, they're going to need, I think, a little bit more than that. Speaking of beating a team in a 7-game series like the Dodgers, it doesn't appear that anybody is on deck for that. The Dodgers are going to not only win the division, but as we feared, Tom, potentially not having much to play for in the last couple of weeks of the season. So no matter how good you're feeling about that season win total, or anyone who would have betted on the over, look out here, because the Dodgers could have this cleared up in the middle of September, because they just crushed the Padres this week, and there's no one else in the division that looks capable of catching them, Tom. And this is, the thing when you go into the year, and it hasn't even really been Kyle Tucker pushing them over the top. A lot of people thought that would be the deal. They're just too good. They're going to add pieces, and then you have to wonder if teams playing the Dodgers the last week of the season even see their starters. They're going to have a lot of time to just rest and wait.
It's going to be, we're sitting here and they're looking at a 14-game lead, in July. Now, we've seen crazier things. We saw it with the Tigers last year. They kind of collapsed. And I'm not saying that the Dodgers are the Tigers or the Tigers are the Dodgers, but it's an insane lead for the Dodgers at this point. They're going to be on cruise control through the rest of the season, unofficial second half. If they're going to have to skip an extra start or do an extra bullpen day of pitching just because they can, and they don't want to push Ohtani out there after he had 3 home runs one night, they want to give him an extra day rest before he starts pitching. Sure, they can do whatever they want because there's no one threatening them at this point. They will always continue to make moves. They will always continue to be aggressive. And like you said, if you are a Dodgers bettor and you have the over, I would not say it's locked up right now. You're going to have to sweat this out until September 30th, knowing that they just may not be starting a full roster just because they don't have to.
The Brewers are not quite in the same spot, but I do think that they have a collision course with the postseason. And how they do it is pitching, defense, and stealing bases, because they certainly don't slug. Not a lot of Brewers players, Tom, hitting home runs this season, but doesn't seem to matter. They took out their division foes, the Cincinnati Reds, earlier in the week. They're playing Arizona this weekend. Doesn't even matter if their manager is around. They seem to win no matter what. I know the Cubs have had such a weird, uneven season. It feels like they either win very big and win a lot, or lose very big and lose a lot. So I don't know what recipe that is for the Cubs, but I know the Brewers are consistent enough to get into the postseason, that's for sure.
They still need one more pitcher and they need one more hitter. And I like to top the Brewers lineup, especially when they're fully healthy and you can have Yelich and Turang and Churio and Contreras, and Vaughn has been super solid this year. That's great. But the bottom portion of their lineup, when you have to throw out, Gary Sanchez, if he's going to be in there behind the plate, or DHing, Blake Perkins, Sal Frelick, that leaves a little bit to be desired. And the frontline starters can be great, but one more pitcher and one more hitter will truly make them a threat. Because ultimately, Craig, this is just about building a team that can theoretically compete with the Dodgers. This should not be about a team trying to take on the Cubs or trying to beat the Reds or the Pirates. It's about building a team that can beat the Dodgers, and that requires one more pitcher and one more hitter. The same thing with the Phillies or the Braves or anyone.
Meanwhile, the American League West has continued to be perplexing. Can't really figure out who is going to end up taking this division. But when you look at it, the Rangers have as good a shot as anybody, honestly. I mean, on paper, they're pretty good. When you consider, Tom, and I was looking at the All-Star rosters, I believe Jacob Latz is the only All-Star on Texas. I mean, think of all the offense they've had through the years and all the pitching they've had, even with Jacob deGrom and some others. But they did have a really good week. They took care of Cleveland. They're playing Detroit right now. Seager is hurt again. If you look at Seattle, Julio's on the concussion list. I mean, Texas has a shot here to stay in and win the division, but it feels like they haven't been able to be consistent over the course of the season. They've been consistently slightly below 500.
Yeah, this is a team that I was very interested in coming into the season. I have a position on them to make the playoffs since, before the season started. They've been up and down. They've dealt with injuries, and whether it's been, not getting Corey Seager in there for a full amount of time. They lost Jack Leiter in terms of pitching. He hasn't been the pitcher that they expected him to be. Same thing with Kumar Rocker. You're up and down in terms of their young prospects with Evan Carter, Josh Jung. No one can stay consistent. When they look good, they look great. But when they look bad, they're just like, this is a team that maybe they'll make the playoffs. I'm not sure. They also need help, and they need consistent hitting. I don't know if it was losing Marcus Semien, that player that at least gives you some stability in their lineup. I'm not saying he's an all-star by any means, but something like that is something what they need in their lineup. The division's wide open. We have 3-4 teams sitting within 4 games of each other. They could win this division and make the playoffs. I'm not going to say easily, but there's a real path forward for it.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed Sam did not find a way to get the Marlins in here at the end. I mean, they have been the best team in all of June. They did already take care of the A's in their series. I'm wondering how Foster Griffin got in twice, but the Marlins didn't get in once. We're going to have a production meeting after this show, Tom. How about those Marlins, huh? Red hot.
On fire. They're winning games. As we talked about last week. What were they, 8-2 or 8-1 over their last 9 home games? At a certain point, they're winning games on the road. They just went to core, so yeah, they were putting up a ton of runs. But they can win low-scoring games. They can win high-scoring games. They have pitching. They have good defense. They have multiple players that really. Besides Lopez, who has been fantastic, as we talked about, he was the first player, 100 total hits this season. Xavier Edwards has been fantastic. Hicks obviously dealing with the injuries, but he was off to a great start. Kyle Stowers was a little bit up and down. He's been back. They have some young players, though, in Casey. I like what they're doing.
They got a shot. A lot of teams don't at this point. Miami is one of those teams that are in the mix. All right, cold teams, including 2 division leaders. We'll have it for you next. All right, every team's going to go through a slump. The question is it just a little slump, or is this something that could be a precursor to the future? If you asked fans of the Braves and Yankees, the sky is falling, but I do feel a little more confident about the first team we'll discuss, Tom, and that is the, of course, Atlanta Braves. They lost 2 out of 3 to St. Louis. They've looked much better against the Mets this weekend, and I think that's really the key. Every team is going to lose 4 in a row or, go 2-8 over a 10-game period, but as far as I'm concerned, the Braves are in it to win it. They've had some injuries, of course, just like they did a year ago, but their offense is just too dynamic, too valuable, and I think the Braves will eventually get it going. If not next week, soon. This won't last forever.
It won't. They have too many good hitters. Granted, these hitters have been inconsistent. Austin Riley is someone that I don't want to say I was high on coming into the year, but at least from a fantasy perspective, I thought he was going to be, in for a bounce back year. Michael Harris is having a good year. Drake Baldwin is finally getting his groove back after he was on the IL. Matt Olson kind of cooled down a little bit. And once they get Acuna back in the lineup, that's going to be, I think it's going to be like a trickle-down domino effect. His threat at the top of the lineup will make pitchers have to have one more good pitch against every subsequent hitter. That means there's going to be one extra guy on base, one extra ball down the middle, and that's where things will start to fall into place because they can kind of pitch around some guys now. Mauricio Dubon and Dom Smith in their lineup are good, but they're good when there's guys in front of them that are on base. That's what it really comes down to.
Meanwhile, the New York Yankees are going through it again. This is their typical June, July swoon where it's all or nothing, and here we go again. They get swept by Detroit. They didn't look good against Minnesota. Their pitching has kind of gone the other way. Rodon is injured again. Sky is falling here. And, Tom, it's just the nature of how they're built, which is when you're just totally reliant on the home run and you're missing 2 guys in the lineup that basically carry you at different points of the season, this is going to happen. I think the Yankees eventually will get it going again. We don't have to talk about the manager getting fired again, but the only way that the Yankees get to and maybe even win a World Series is if they get hot like they did against the Dodgers a couple of years ago. But for the last 20 years, outside of that American League pennant, they don't. They just go cold because this is what they have, and then the pitching comes in, and then they shut down the hitting, and then the Yankees go nowhere in the postseason. So I would tell you the same thing is going to happen. They're going to win 90-some-odd games. They're going to make the playoffs, and if they get real hot and the bats get hot, then they'll go far, but in all likelihood, that won't happen, and they'll get knocked out again.
It's going to be the same story as we see oftentimes where they're cold right now. As you said, every team's going to go through a 2-8 stretch or whatever it might be. They're going to flip things around and go 8-2, and they're going to score 60 runs over those 8 wins. But then if that's not happening at the start of the postseason, to your point, that's where things fall apart. It's great to have pitching that you can, or hopefully, lean on with terms of Schlittler and, obviously Garrett Cole being back. If Rodon can get back, it's great to have that. It's great to have a back end of the bullpen when they're playing well and pitching well. But if you don't have consistent hitting and, Judge isn't there or Stanton's not there or the threat of them aren't there in the lineup, then it all falls apart. And you're going to win one series in the wild card round, but you won't go for farther than a 7-game series. It's just not going to happen.
Meanwhile, the team in their division, the Blue Jays, I don't know, Tom. I'm starting to think they're never going to get it together. I mean, we're talking about a lot of data here, almost 90 games. It just doesn't feel like this is their year, and that jinx that a lot of teams have after losing the World Series appears to have hit the Blue Jays here. Not scoring runs a lot. Saturday, nothing. Friday, 2. Tuesday, nothing. Monday, 2. I mean, this offense has just been dreadful. Their pitching's been okay. It hasn't been horrible. Cease has been good. Savage has been good. But eventually you just got to call it what it is. The Blue Jays have kind of been this team the last few years as opposed to last year. And I would just wonder if last year was a little bit of an anomaly.
It's a great question. The hitting, I always had hopes the hitting would turn around. And I said, okay, you come into the season and you're waiting for Bieber to get back. How much can we put into Scherzer? We weren't sure at the time if Jose Barrios was going to pitch. I say, okay, could they tread water until they get these pitchers back and then they'll look somewhat good? I think the pitching, to your point, they look fine. The hitting, far more inconsistent than we ever imagined. I never expected Vladdy to be on pace for 10 home runs for the entire season, right, where he was on pace for at this point. I never expected that. George Springer's been in and out of the lineup. So I think there's too much to overcome for a team that has too many holes. And maybe it's the hangover from last year. I think there's just too much to overcome at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't look like a postseason team to me. Meanwhile, the A's have flipped the switch. They're going completely the other way, and it's been one story that's been more obvious than others. It's been the losing, and it's been the starting pitching. The A's, by the way, have now lost virtually every game this week: Monday, Tuesday, Friday, and last night. I know yesterday, they lost 7-2 against Miami. Just want to make sure I clarify that because I was watching that game. They're giving up a ton of runs. They can't pitch at all, Tom. I know it's going to be tough at altitude, and they've been getting through with hitting the ball as well as they have. But if they don't get some decent starting pitching, this A's team is going to end up completely falling flat in the second half.
I said this at the beginning of the year. I said I like the A's. I think their lineup is super fun. They have a ton of power. They got some young hitters. And when you look at Kurtz and Soderstrom and Langoliers, and obviously, at the time, Brendan Brooker, when we're previewing the season, I know he's done for the year now, but I said they were going to win games 9-7, and they're going to lose games 9-7. That's just what it is. It's the nature of their lineup. It's the nature of the park that they're dealing with. They have great hitters. And when you have some guy, like Nick Kurtz on the team, that can hit 2 home runs a game, you're going to score a lot, but you're also going to give up a lot. So until you have some stability with the pitching, we're always going to be in for the extreme outcomes of games, and it's never going to be a stable team to ever consider that. Say, hey, they could go far, but I don't really think so.
Yeah, I think, Tom, really to encapsulate their season too, now that I've watched a couple of games live when the Marlins have played them in Sacramento, is I think they can go through this another year in Sacramento. And by the way, the crowds have been fantastic. They're getting a lot of people showing up for these games, and that's great too. But Tom, if we're, and I don't know what Vegas is going to play like, and I don't know what that park is going to play like, and clearly the dome will be closed a lot, and I don't know how that will affect one thing or another. I could just tell you that there's no data that supports anything with open or closed at any of these stadiums. It just doesn't happen. And they've done studies. I am concerned that the A's could be headed down a road like the Rockies, where you just may not be able to pitch. And I know that they're saying that that's going to be okay, but the Rockies, Tom, have never been able to pitch. And outside of signing these guys like Michael Lorenzen to one-year deals for people who just want to cash out at the end of their careers, I don't know how they're going to get pitchers to want to play there through free agency.
That's the real question. The new stadium's great. New direction for the organization is great, but not being able to attract free agents, quality free agents, that could be the issue.
Yeah, with the pitching, I think that will be an issue. All right, we'll go back to the week that was. Several changes. We'll talk about them next.
He gives them a chance, but they've got to keep putting people around him. I think he's a very good quarterback. I don't know that he's the one that elevates you all by himself. I think he still needs the help. Excellent player, perfect guy to lead your organization, perfect place for it. And by the way, I'd start him from day one. I wouldn't waste any time on it. But got to put pieces around him, and John Spytek has already started doing that.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio. Only on SportsGrid.
This is the third time he's been medically checked. Even the refs coming over. He's like, dude, like come on. Like after every sort of play in front of the net, the kind of goal he's done. He's on the
jumping.
He's on the turf, like you said, like he's like driving off the top rope. Look at him here again. I give him credit. He's freaking fearless.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Are you ready for el verano más futbolero de tu vida? Latination Football Club turns into Copa Nation, our live stream experience every day de lunes a viernes, 11 a.m. Pacific and 2 p.m. Pacific as well. Checking in after the games. In that slot between games, we got you, my friend. We're going to have celebrities, legends of the game, content creators, and a bunch of our friends that are going to keep you entertained and informed, letting you know what's happening all across the 3 countries that are going to be experiencing this crazy, crazy football tournament. Don't miss it. Copa Nation right here on Latin Nation every day. Check it out.
Lots of changes in baseball in a front office and a managerial change in the last 7 days or so. Let's break them down. Tom Vecchio, Craig Mish with you on Pro Baseball Today. The Angels finally seem to have some direction, as we think. We don't know. I say we think because genuinely some bizarre stuff has been happening the last decade or so with the Angels, Tom. So Perry Minasian has been fired as the general manager of the Angels. Whether or not, honestly, Tom, all these decisions were his, I have no idea. They don't appear to be, but let's just say they were his, and he ended up falling on the sword for stuff. So John Mozeliak comes in, and Mozeliak says that he is there on the interim basis to try and find some new leadership, and in an interview said that he hadn't even spoken to Artie Moreno before he got hired. So I'm guessing this was his son. I don't even know. But the Angels could use a guy like Mo to at least right the ship. Now, I don't know that Mo is the answer for the Cardinals for the next 10 years because the game certainly has changed. Mo probably ends up in the National Baseball Hall of Fame as a general manager. He won a bunch of World Series with St. Louis, drafted and developed a lot of players that went on to the big leagues. But talk about having work cut out for him. I would say that this is probably the toughest gig in baseball to be a GM over because I just can't figure out the direction of where they're headed.
A couple thoughts about, Angels firing Minasian, and I would say, okay, what took so long? It's not like anything was different this year than it was, a year ago or a year before that. He's been there for, 5.5, 6 seasons, whatever you want to call it. But ultimately, it's going to come down to Art Moreno because the team has no direction and they continue to make bad decisions. They systemically, from the top down, they have had an awful direction for multiple years. Whether it was not trading Shohei Ohtani when they could have gotten assets back for that. Remember, we brought it up before break. They had Shohei Ohtani and they did nothing. Couldn't even make the playoffs. Ruining the years of Mike Trout and not making the playoffs. They've been to the playoffs once and played 3 total career playoff games. What is the team going to do? Because if you just want to be there to be a check to cash in every year so he can make some money, Moreno is the owner, I don't know what to say because it is a complete disaster of an organization and they need to completely burn it all down, get new ownership in there, and start over.
Yeah, that's not going to happen with the ownership. But what I would say is they definitely have to start over in terms of like building a farm system and stop signing like your Kenley Jansens to contracts. Horrible free agent deals that you just knew wouldn't work out at the beginning of the season. Then you can't even trade these players. So just a mess with the Angels. Speaking of a mess, Mets are in a similar situation. They finally did fire Carlos Mendoza after he got the vote of confidence a couple of months ago. There was an interview I saw with the New York Post and their owner, Steve Cohen. Now, on the flip side, I do believe in Steve Cohen. I do believe, Tom, that he wants to win. And he owned it, saying it's been a complete failure. Like he's owning all of this stuff, but it doesn't make any Mets fans feel better about this. And I don't think it was Mendoza's fault, but I don't know also that Mendoza is going to be so quick to get a new managing job. So Mets are, I think they're okay. This is just going to be a lost season for them. It did feel a little wonky what David Stearns did in the offseason. It's like, let's get him. Okay, we didn't get him. All right, so instead we'll sign him. All right, so instead of signing this one, we'll sign this. Tom, it's just like anything in life. When you're not taking the main option and you're taking the backup option, you open up yourself to some possibilities of a disaster. And the Mets, I understand why they went for it and changed everything up. And the reason why is because they won nothing with Pete Alonso and they won nothing with Brandon Nimmo. Nothing. But if you're going to do that, you got to make sure that you're going to look good on the back end, and their backup options failed.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. I believe with you that Cohen wants to win, and he's willing to do the things that it takes to win. And he's at least proven that to some extent. He's willing to spend money, but you also need to spend money in the proper way. And you can't just be pivoting from one option of not getting Kyle Tucker and then going completely out of left field, no pun intended, and taking a different player, a Bo Bichette, and putting out a position that he's never playing. Sign Jorge Polanco to start at first base when he's never played a single game at first base in his MLB career. So it's good to be aggressive, but if you miss on being aggressive, you can't just then take any other random shot to fill a hole on a roster. That's what you can't be doing. So I think it is more of a lost season rather than a completely new direction for the team. They need to make some changes. It needs to start with Cohen and Stearns at the top making those changes, but being unified and going all in the same direction.
Yeah, and look, they could have kept Pete. I mean, Mets fans who were traditional, they wish that they would have kept Pete Alonso and Nimmo and some of these other guys. But, in all likelihood, the Mets probably would have been better. They probably would have been 500. And then we would have been yelling at Stearns at the end of the season when the Mets went nowhere. How did you just keep the same team and did nothing new? And so he tried. He failed. I would say, Tom, Stearns, even regardless. Listen, this is what the funny part is that a couple of months ago they said that Carlos Mendoza was going nowhere. Cohen now said Stearns is going nowhere. Trust me when I tell you, Stearns has one more year, Tom. He's got one more year to get things going. And if he doesn't, he'll be looking for a job as well. We'll be back with more pro baseball today when we return right after these messages. All right, time to take a look at a week ahead and the final week ahead before we take a break from baseball. In fact, the baseball All-Star game is coming up on Tuesday night, 1 week from Tuesday. So to set the schedule here for you and here at SportsGrid, Monday after this week, Monday is the Home Run Derby. Tuesday is the All-Star game, and then there is no baseball at all on Wednesday. There is one baseball game on Thursday because of a rainout, and then everybody gets started back on Friday. So you may remember through the years, there was never any games on Thursday in Major League Baseball. Then a couple of years ago, they brought back a few, and then the Players Association are like, whoa, we don't need to have any games on Thursday. We want the day off. And so there'll just be that one game on Thursday. And in fact, some programming changes for us here on SportsGrid during that week as well, which we'll talk about next week here on the show. Okay, so is this the matchup for the division? It's a 4-game series, as I talked about. The Yankees have their shot at the Rays. I got to tell you, Tom, this is it. They have got to at least split this series to stay involved in the race. And I don't know that they can. I mean, you look at the matchups here, and yes, Garrett Cole is still great. But beyond that, I heavily favor Tampa Bay in at least 3 of these matchups this week, Tom. And if the Yankees are not going to score 5 runs and they don't have Judge and they don't have Stanton, I mean, this could be the put-away series here, Tom. I hate to say that in July, but Tampa Bay wins 3 out of 4 here. There's nothing to talk about.
Right. A split is what's absolutely necessary. Based on just quickly glancing at the next time they play the Rays is at the end of September. They play them in, September 22nd, 23rd, 4 games at the end of the season. So if you can't muster up a split now, I don't know how things are going to be getting better moving forward. The Rays are only going to extend their lead. The Yankees are going to have to meet trade water. Now, granted, they have a 4.5 game lead in the wild card. The Yankees, this is, so they can certainly make the playoffs. And to your point, so they're going to win 90 some odd games, whatever it is. But winning the division and having home field advantage and putting yourself in the best spot, that is looking like a couple steps away.
Brewers and Cardinals, is this a matchup for the division? Shocking that the Cardinals are still in this thing and hanging around, which is crazy. But we're going to see the Miz pitch in this series, I am sure. Big surprise here that the Cardinals pitching has been very capable. McGreevy, Leahy, Palante, they've been okay. Harrison, look, this is a really good matchup this week. I'm not sure which way it's going to go. Kind of a coin flip type series. I've been waiting to see if the Cardinals eventually fall, and they don't seem to do it, Tom. They're still in position for a wild card.
They are. The pitching in for the Cardinals is something that you and I have spoken about a couple times. We were both low on the Cardinals coming into the year. We're both low on the Cardinals pitching staff as it is right now. We don't think it's very good. And I think the Brewers are by far the better team, but there's something about the Cardinals, especially when they play at home. They're certainly very pesky. And, I don't know if we're going to be getting a full effort from the Brewers. I don't know if they're going to scale back on Miz right before the All-Star break. Is that something that we could possibly see? And they only put him out there for 5 innings just to get him out there and keep him loose, but they don't need to push him out there for 7+ innings, whatever it might be. So I think the Cardinals are not a great team, but they somehow still win games.
Very concerned for the Padres, Tom. Not concerned for the Major League roster, but I'm concerned because A.J. Preller every year at the trade deadline goes out and makes these massive moves to help the team by trading prospects, and they've traded almost them all. Like, I don't know who's left to trade. The Diamondbacks will play the Padres this week. The Diamondbacks are not very good themselves, but they're in a better position, I think, moving forward, because at least they don't look like the worst team in baseball like the Padres have. What has gone on here? They can't pitch. They can't hit. I mean, this formidable Padres rotation that used to be Buehler, Marquez, Canning. What has happened this fall for the Padres?
It has been a disaster. Obviously, this last week has kind of amplified that in terms of at least the results of being at Wrigley and giving up all those runs and all those home runs. And the lineup just doesn't have it. Coming into the season, admittedly, I was high on the Giants and I was low on the Padres. I was wrong about the Giants, okay. But the Padres just weren't a team that I was interested in. I thought they had holes in their pitching staff. Not having a Joe Musgrove and a Yu Darvish in there, at least to stabilize it. Everyone knows that they have a great bullpen, but if you don't have a lead to get to the bullpen to pitch in favorable spots, that doesn't matter at a certain point. Mason Miller can break all these records, but if you're not going to put him in spots where he actually can shut down a game, then he's a moot point at a certain point. And the lineup just has never come to fruition. Tatis never stepped forward into being a true MVP candidate every year. Jackson Merrill never really ascended into being a secondary star. Machado's on the back end of his career. There's too many problems with the team to buy into them in any capacity.
Blue Jays and the Giants this week, interleague series. You don't see this series happen that often. And, the marquee matchup probably Wednesday with Dylan Cease and Logan Webb, who's having a tough start to his July. Nothing really scares me on paper for either team here, but I would say that both teams, as you said, Tom, probably had higher aspirations back in April than they do right now. Giants getting ready to make some trades, I would guess. And you know what? Blue Jays could be in that same spot. I know that they're going to fight, but I would ask, the Blue Jays and their front office how they think about the team in August if they're sitting under 500 chasing New York and Tampa Bay. Probably time to punt.
Yeah, I would look at this series as, a lot of lack of scoring, a lot of unders potentially. And I would like to say that the Logan Webb start for the Giants would be a good showcase for him, against another dominant pitch, another AL Cy Young candidate, that they could put Webb out there. And that would be a good showcase for him right before the All-Star break, right before the trade deadline, to up his value, to kind of right the ship after a couple of rough starts to start July. And that would be a good spot to say, hey, Logan Webb is the pitcher that we believe in, and then look to trade him at a certain point. But I'm not sure if the Giants are going to do that. I think that's what they should be doing. But a lack of scoring is what the series is probably going to bring us.
Houston takes on Washington, and Houston, believe it or not, with this horrendous season that they're having, their run differential, horrible, no pitching whatsoever, they are still right in the mix for the playoffs. I mean, Yordan Alvarez should win the MVP because without him, I think Houston would be 10 games under 500. I got no data on that, but look at these pitching matchups for Houston. I mean, Burrows, yuck. Imai, yuck. Arrighetti, he's been good, I guess. He's been one of their stars this season, but I favor Washington pretty heavily in this series. And I mean, look, I can't look at Houston and think that they're anything but fool's gold here. But the problem is, Tom, is that Houston is probably about to hit a rebuild button, and the GM is probably looking at this like, I don't want to do that because I want to stay around and I want to keep my job. I don't know. This one to me, Tom, what Houston does comes down to the owner, like Jim Crane. I wonder what he is thinking here, because it could be dangerous if they trade prospects and try and fight for a season, which, by the way, Houston's going nowhere. Even if they win the division, they're not good enough.
And I would say, outside of Griffin, we spoke about at the beginning of the show, Cade Cavalli's been pretty solid for the Nats. I know a little bit of controversy in his last start against Boston. He looked really good in that. Some semantics or some shenanigans going on in that start with some hit batters and whatnot. But he's been solid. Griffin's been solid. We got to be favoring the Nats in this series. And Craig, this is going to be a series where the first team to score 8 runs wins a game. Right? It's just that's what 8-6 final score, 9-7, whatever it's going to be. You have to score runs. Both pitching staffs and bullpens are not good. Score runs and win the game.
Rockies take on the Dodgers. You talk about a mismatch here. This is one absolutely on paper. Although the Rockies are hitting the crap out of the ball lately. I saw them against Miami, and they've continued that this weekend. But you talk about a lack of pitching for the Rockies. It's there yet again. So Kyle Freeland, are you kidding me? Kyle Freeland has to go pitch in L.A. I guess he looks on the other side and says it's Lauer, so maybe you have a shot. Lorenzen, boy, did he cash out on his season, taking that money that he did from the Rockies. He's having a horrendous season, walking everybody, gives up hits, and then they signed a pitcher, Flettner, who's going to start against Sasaki. Sasaki not great himself, but he talked about 7-5 games, 10-8 games. These are probably them this weekend. I think the Rockies are going to hit. Like they do have a pretty good lineup, 6-7 guys that can hit, but I think this series in particular, and I don't know when it starts. Okay, it starts Monday. I think you're going to get potentially a minus 350 on a line this week. We haven't seen many of them, but I think we're going to get some of the biggest odds this week of any series this year.
You said that, Freeland has to go to the Dodgers and pitch. Thankfully, he doesn't have to be at home and pitch against the Dodgers at Coors Field in the summer because we are going to see some crazy outcomes for this. And this is a series where, you can get good stuff from a Hunter Goodman, who's been awesome. You can get some, fancy production out of your Rockies players if you had them. But this is all about the Dodgers, and it's just a matter of how much the Dodgers are going to win by. It's not just going to go, they're going to eke out some 2-1.
The older players in the WNBA going, hey, man, we were here when they were paying us nothing. We were here when we had to go overseas to make a paycheck. You're walking in here, you don't realize how easy you have it. So there is some of that too. But yeah, Jordan got beaten up. Magic got beaten up. Bird got beaten up. Kareem got beaten up. Wemby is getting beaten up, by the way.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio. Only on SportsGrid.
This is the third time he's been medically checked. Even the refs coming over. He's like, dude, come on. Like after every sort of play in front of the net, the kind of goal he's done. He's
stop jumping.
He's on the turf, like you said, he's driving off the top rope. Look at him here again. I give him credit. He's freaking fearless.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Their pitching has been really good in their bullpen too. So Chris Getz, their general manager, credit to him. This guy was getting pounded a couple of years ago for decisions and everything like that, but man, it is seemingly working out. The fans, by the way, all of a sudden are pouring in there. Their attendance is on the rise too. So a great sign that the White Sox are in this thing. Now, long term, I don't know. Is this a postseason team? Is it a deep postseason team?
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
Let's continue on our previews of the week ahead. It's Pro Baseball Today. Craig Mish, Tom Vecchio here on the show. We'll start off with the Cubs and Orioles, a very rare interleague matchup. You don't see that often. Orioles, as Tom mentioned, kind of hanging around in the playoff race. Cubs, boy, you tell me. I don't know what to predict any given day. They play at Wrigley, they put up 17. They play at Wrigley the next day, they give up 17. Maybe they'll have better luck in Baltimore. They acquired David Peterson from the Mets. He made one start. He'll start Thursday against Trevor Rogers. Dean Kramer is back pitching now with Baltimore because they've had just a lot of issues and injuries. But, you know, these starters here, I mean, Matthew Boyd certainly was expected to start the season with the Cubs and pitch well. But beyond that, they've had so many pitching injuries, Tom. That's been the key.
It really has. And this is, I'm not going to say a series for the Cubs who are holding down a wild card spot right now. The Orioles are 3-ish games back. You know, this is a series that the Cubs really should be winning 2 out of 3. And if you're not, this is a good point where you need to go out and reevaluate and say, we need another pitcher because we haven't gotten enough. And yes, they dealt with injuries and Boyd is back and Peterson got blown up the other day, giving up 1 million runs. But this is a good spot to reevaluate, saying if we can't shut down a team that's struggling like the Orioles, we need to make some serious adjustments because the Cubs are not a team that should just have wild card aspirations for that market. They need to have true playoff and championship aspirations.
Royals and Mets. Hey, remember that World Series many years ago, over 10 years ago? We got that showdown coming up here. Not quite the same showdown, obviously. Seth Lugo, Kodai Senga, that's potluck game right there. Kolek against Victor Scott. Waka, who's an all-star for the Royals because they can't find anybody else, against Sean Manaea on Thursday. 2 teams with high aspirations, or at least higher aspirations, Tom, that are headed nowhere.
This is very simple. Great spot for Lugo against his former team and also Michael Wacha as showcase games for them to be traded, right? And I know the Mets aren't the best offense, but if you can have good performances on the road from 2 veteran pitchers, we talked about it before, these are pitchers that some team would like to acquire. And, you know, maybe we talked about the Phillies, like, yeah, these guys aren't going to be frontline starters when you have a Wheeler and a Sanchez, but a little bit of depth for a Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha being a 3rd or 4th starter on a team like the Phillies, that seems like a pretty good match, right? Have those guys, good performances, good showcase, trade them away.
Braves take on the Pirates. This would appear to be a good spot for Pittsburgh, but I ask you, Tom, is Paul Skeens right? What is going on here? Because this is, you know, clearly the biggest struggles that he's had at any level since maybe even before LSU. I can't figure this one out. He faces off with Bryce Elder on Tuesday, and then, of course, Jared Jones, Mitch Keller, Waldrop, Sale. You know, Braves, you know, normally would not be favored at all in a series this week like this, especially against Skeens and Jones. But Skeens has not been able to get right, and this is going on several weeks.
It really has, and it's just that I think it's just the capacity of. I'm not going to say a dead arm for Skeens, but it's been a long year mentally for him, and this is just my interpretation of it. It starts off the year, you know, so rough and just a fluky game where there's balls being dropped by O'Neal Cruz, and then he rebounds, and then the team is struggling, and he's just not winning games. And I know that pitcher wins don't matter at all when it's all said and done, but the team not having success, him not having some level of success to hang his hat on, I think it's becoming a strain on him. And that's really where we're going to see the floor fall out for the Pirates, and how much longer will Skeens be in a Pirates uniform? That's what I keep thinking about.
I mean, I just keep thinking about, can he get right? I got to see him pitch before I think he's going to be participating in the All-Star game. He pitches on Tuesday. If he pitches Sunday, by the way, that would put him out regardless for that game. Red Sox and White Sox, 2 teams that have flipped spots in terms of Sox this season. White Sox pushing for the postseason. Red Sox pushing toward going fishing. Peyton Tolley and Schultz. Martin, of course, will pitch for the White Sox. He's one of their top starters. Anthony Kay. The Red Sox just do not have a formidable lineup going right now, Tom. And it just seems like as soon as games start, they're down 2-0, they're down 3-0, and have to come back.
Yeah, if they're not playing the Yankees, the Red Sox look terrible. That's just what it comes down to. And again, I think the White Sox, the turnaround that they've had this season, when some people expect them to have one of the worst records in baseball, along with the Rockies, to see what they've done with their young core, I think is really, really exciting for the Red Sox. Obviously, it's great to get a big series win against your rivals, right, like the Yankees, and sweep them and feel good about that. But ultimately, the season's going nowhere. So trade away some players, and good for the White Sox thus far.
Guardians take on the Twins in the early part of the week. Gavin Williams will start Thursday. He has been really good for Cleveland. For the Twins, they're just kind of going through it right now, trying to figure out who they are, Tom. And, outside of Byron Buxton, it's pretty much been a lost season for Minnesota. This is what we thought. They actually played, I thought, a little bit better than most people predicted in April and May, but then that sort of went sideways in June. And, Buxton has said he wants to stay in Minnesota, so it's going to be a slow summer, I think, in Minneapolis.
I think it is as well, but this is also a spot for the Guardians to pick up at least 2. They got to pick up at least 2 wins in this. They're tied for the division lead right now with the White Sox. If they truly want to compete for the postseason, and we've got to remember, they're doing this all without J-Ram. They're kind of treading water. They're kind of doing all right without Jose Ramirez, their best player. So they got to be able to pick up 2 out of 3 against the Twins, who are clearly inferior to them, pick up these wins and continue to maintain as long as Ramirez is out and be in a spot to compete once he's ready to come back.
Detroit, it's now or never. It's time for Detroit to keep pushing here if they want to stay in this thing. It feels like they kind of do, but I don't know that they will. Right matchup for them on Tuesday. Tigers will be hugely favored with Tarek Skubal on the bump. And then Melton and Valdez will close out the series. A's are probably happy. They won't give up 10 runs a game in Sacramento, I would guess, this series. But Detroit's starting to play a little bit better baseball, Tom. I wonder if there's another jump-off point for them here.
It's going to be really interesting because both of these teams, need 2 wins. They both need 3 wins when it comes to this series. The Tigers, if they lose 2 of 3 to the Athletics, you gotta trade Skubal sooner rather than later. You can't. I know, Craig, you think they should be waiting up until the deadline to get the best deal possible, but you also just want to get out ahead of it sometimes and get the best deal for the most desperate team early, because the A's are still in it. The A's are still in it, and the Tigers don't look to be in it, at least when it comes to the division or the AL wild card overall. So I would say trade Skubal as early as possible, get the best deal you can, and I know those things may seem a little bit separate, getting the best deal you can and trading. I think you want to get out in front of it. The A's, they're in a spot to compete for the division because there's 4 teams within 4 games of the AL West. If they take 2 out of 3 off the Detroit Tigers, it's sell for the Tigers.
Yeah, I don't see either team going anywhere, but I also don't see Skubal getting moved anytime soon. I think Tigers are going to wait this out till the very end. All right, we'll preview the rest of the games. We come back next. You're watching Pro Baseball Today here on SportsGrid. Craig Mish, along with Tom Vecchio. Hope you had a nice July 4th weekend. We'll continue after this. Continuing on with series previews this week on Pro Baseball Today, Craig Mish, Tom Vecchio. Let's look at the Angels and Rangers. Jose Soriano, who's had a nice season for Los Angeles, takes on Jacob deGrom. Mackenzie Gore is back for the Rangers, and so is Nathan Eovaldi. They're getting healthier. Maybe that's the key here. Angels would be fortunate, I think, and feel good about maybe taking one game out of the three this week, Tom. I don't feel overly confident that they will.
They're going to be an underdog in all of these games. You know, the Rangers are a good enough team and have good enough pitching that they're going to deserve enough respect to be the favorites at home, especially the deGrom game. And, you know, frankly, this is a team that if the Texas Rangers don't win 2 of 3, I'm going to be stunned. I really am going to be stunned. And this is going to, you know, cause a moment of pause in my belief in the Rangers that if they can't do this against the Angels when they're at home with some pretty darn good pitchers going, then they have no true upside in there and can be a threat for anyone in the AL, which is really weak this year.
Yeah, it definitely is anybody's game. We talked about Houston being involved as well. All right, so I'll be on the pre and post game this week for all the Marlins games in the homestand, and it starts off with Seattle. And look, not only is Miami playing well, and you don't want to, say an injury is good news for a team, but I mean, it's certainly in this case it is for Miami with Julio Rodriguez being placed on the concussion list. So, folks, he is not going to play. I wouldn't think. I don't think he's eligible to play in the first 2 games of the series. Max Meyer, who just made the All-Star team, will face off with Brandon Wu. What a showdown that will be on Tuesday night. Jansen Junk is expected to come off the injured list to start Wednesday against Miller, and then Luis Castillo, who has had a strange season for him without a doubt, takes on Tyler Phillips on Thursday. I think that, this is finally a series that Miami, they leave altitude. They've hit more home runs than anybody in baseball this week, and they had like one of the least home runs going into the month of July. But I think this will be more of a low-scoring, tight series, got good pitching on both sides.
Yeah, we're not expecting J-Rod to play for the Mariners. Like you said, you never, wishing for an injury, hoping for an injury, but you only can play who's in front of you. You only can play who's in front of you at whatever given time it is. But I also don't think, regardless of that, the Mariners would bring him back knowing that they have the break coming up. Like, you could give him those couple days just because the Mariners have their eyes set on the postseason. They want to have him ready for the second half, so you shouldn't rush him back right before the All-Star break. And, Craig, I would think that you would agree that this is also a pretty good litmus test for the Marlins. They've been playing some great baseball. You also want to see them do it against a really high-quality team, and I do not expect a ton of scoring at all. I expect this to be a very, very low-scoring series. Really quality, good pitching on both sides, but it's going to be fun.
Definitely, Miami will face better pitching against Seattle than they did against Colorado and the A's. I will agree with you there. There's no doubt. And then we'll close this out with the Phillies taking on the Reds. Zach Wheeler's last start came out of the game, apparently not happy about it, but he and Don Mattingly, I would assume, have worked things out since then. Reds have been pretty disappointing. They've got Abbott and then Wednesday Burns. So Wednesday, it feels like Tuesday, Phillies favored. Wednesday, Reds favored. And then Thursday, Phillies probably favored again. So generally, I would look at this and say it's in Cincinnati. It's in the summer. You got 2 good offenses, a lot of runs, but the Reds just don't score like I thought they would this year.
Yeah, they were scoring a lot at the beginning of the year when, the young players were stepping up. Obviously, Ellie was on fire at the beginning of the year along with Sal Stewart. And, you're getting consistent hitting. I would say mostly consistent hitting top to bottom, but this looks like a series where I think the Phillies take 2 out of 3. I think all 3 of the games are going to be high scoring. Like I said, Burns has been fantastic for the Reds, and I believe he should be somewhat in the Cy Young conversation as one of those fringe options. I don't think he'll ultimately end up winning it, but this is a spot where the Phillies, considering how much the Braves have been struggling, this is a chance for them to really solidify their spot in the NL East. They're only 3 games behind. All it takes is a bounce back game from Skeens, and the Braves lose a game here or there, and then all of a sudden the Phillies jump in within a game. So I think the Phillies take 2 out of 3, and I think all of them are going to be high scoring.
And so I know, Tom, that you love baseball. I love baseball too, and I'm looking ahead toward next week and seeing the homestand for Miami. And then, of course, I look at the schedule and I see nothing for a few days. So what will you do? What will Tom Vecchio do when there is no baseball to be had. I've been doing a lot of World Cup shows. You've been doing a lot too here on SportsGrid as well. I feel like we're fortunate, by the way, to have the World Cup this July and this summer too. We generally don't have anything going on. Will you take a break of any kind? Like, what is it that you do during your All-Star break?
Normally during the All-Star break, this is when I begin a deep dive into NFL season. Start getting myself acclimated for any props that are out there. Just reminding myself of all the draft picks that happen for all the NFL teams and what the depth charts are going to look like. So that is certainly going to happen on top of the World Cup.
Yeah, 2 weeks away from training camps opening in the National Football League and less than 2 months away from our first college football game of the season. In fact, I think 50 some odd days before that happens too. We're almost in the thick of football season here at SportsGrid. We'll be back with prediction markets next. Don't go away.
Older players in the WNBA going, hey man, we were here when they were paying us nothing. We were here when we had to go overseas to make a paycheck. You're walking in here, you don't realize how easy you have it. So there is some of that too. But yeah, Jordan got beaten up. Magic got beaten up. Bird got beaten up. Kareem got beaten up. You know, Wemby is getting beaten up, by the way.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio. Only on SportsGrid.
This is the third time he's been medically checked. Even the refs coming over. He's like, dude, like come on. Like after every sort of play in front of the net, the kind of goal he's done. He's on the
jumping.
He's on the turf, like we said, like he's like driving off the top rope. Look at him here again. I give him credit. He's freaking fearless.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Pitching has been really good in their bullpen too. So Chris Getz, their general manager, credit to him. This guy was getting pounded a couple of years ago for decisions and everything like that, but man, it is seemingly working out. The fans, by the way, all of a sudden are pouring in there. Their attendance is on the rise too. So a great sign that the White Sox are in this thing. Now, long term, I don't know. Like, is this a postseason team? Is it a deep postseason team?
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Time for us to dive into some of the prediction markets, and we'll check in on Kalshi for the next 10 minutes and talk some managers here on the show. And Tom, probably one of the most overrated discussions you can have would be on managers in baseball. I just generally don't think that this makes a lot of a difference. I mean, it's the players, it's the front office, and then the manager, for me at least in this thing. Yes, they can impact the game, and in the postseason it comes into it more than it does in the regular season, but I feel like it's a worthless conversation. But for the Mets, it's probably a good one because whoever comes in is not coming into the best spot here, Tom. And I would think that anybody who does an interview with the Mets, understanding there's only 30 of these gigs. So when somebody says, why would somebody want to take this job? That's silly. Anybody that could become a manager is going to take it because there's only 30 in the world. But that being said, is it just Alex Cora's gig at this point? I mean, Don Mattingly, it would appear, we'll get to Philly in a minute, but Don Mattingly, it would appear, has done at least a good enough job to, maybe get another 1-year deal. I would not expect Don Mattingly to sign a multi-year deal managing the Phillies again, given his age and what he's already gone through in his life. But I'm not so sure that this is Alex Cora's gig. I mean, I got to tie it to the GM and whoever isn't there somebody left in Milwaukee to hire, right? Like, doesn't it feel like that's the direction?
It has to be, seeing this list of names that, you have available, to me, if you were to bring in someone that's, named on the list like David Wright, to me, that just seems like they're just trying to do something only to stir up the fan base and create some positive momentum when, yeah, I think he would take the job if he wanted to, but it doesn't seem like that's a real solution. Alex Cora doesn't seem like a real solution. I think it would have to be a manager, to your point, that is connected to the front office in some capacity, and they're going to work in tandem of what they're trying to accomplish, of what Stearns wants to do for the Mets. So I don't think it's going to be a Rocco Baldelli. I don't think it's going to be a David Wright. Alex Cora clearly has the most experience outside of Bruce Bochy on this. I just don't think Bruce Bochy would be taking this type of job. I think it'd be something like a Cora. But again, whoever gets it, I think they will take it because, to your point, there's only so many of these jobs to go around.
Yeah, when you hear somebody say that, why would anybody want to take the job? That's somebody that's not educated, because anybody that could get a manager gig is going to take it. Philadelphia, of course, Mattingly will certainly be the favorite here. By the way, for the Mets, Carlos Beltran's name popped up there. I mean, look, I think that's a good option too. I just don't know that he fits with Stearns. I just don't know. But so for Philadelphia, it's going to be more or less the same names. But I'm pretty confident in saying, Tom, that barring a complete meltdown from Philadelphia in July, August, and September, or maybe some sort of sweep in the wild card, I think Don Mattingly's back, and I think he does one more year with Philadelphia. I don't think it's more than one, but I do think it will be one with Philadelphia.
Yeah, I would agree. I would see maybe a 2-year deal at most, just because they want to show some organizational stability. But outside of, again, a complete collapse, I think this is largely a non-issue. Mattingly's back next year, and they just keep it going maybe just a year-to-year contract type of thing. It's like, hey, if they're doing well, they'll just keep him around for one more year.
Red Sox will also be looking for a new skipper. Tracy will not be it next season, and we don't even know if Craig Breslow will be the guy hiring the manager. So you talk about trying to make money on a prediction market. Maybe this is the spot, because we don't know if Breslow will be back. If he is, then it could be a simple hiring. If he's not, Tom, this is going to be hired directly to whoever Boston's next GM is. And by the way, it could be somebody with Tampa Bay, who knows what Boston's going to end up doing. I can't even begin to hazard a guess as to who the next manager will be in Boston.
It's a completely left in the air. The thing I would come back to say about the Red Sox is it just can't just be anyone. Like, this is a market and a fan base that are beyond frustrated with recent results. They despise the ownership group in Boston. They don't like the direction of the franchise, the front office, whatever it might be. You can't just choose anybody. It has to be someone that is going to bring a real turning point to the franchise and a new clear direction. And that should be aligned with the front office and management. I'm not saying it's going to be. That's what it should be. So you can't just take any random AAA manager and promote him to being a first-time manager. I think you need to have someone that's going to be a rock there for the Red Sox and be a stable point moving forward for many years to come.
A lot of influx with Boston coming in the offseason, probably more than the Mets, I would think, too. All right, let's talk about some other managers. I don't think anyone gets let go until September at this point, Tom. I don't see it. Look, I think Matt Quartaro in Kansas City, I don't know that this is necessarily his fault, but I think someone's going to have to fall on the sword in Kansas City for this. Is Tony Vitello going to come back for another year with the Giants after getting a multi-year deal? Kurt Suzuki's on a 1-year contract, and there's going to be a new GM, so he's not going to be the manager, I don't think, of the Angels next season. But would they just let it go through the end of the year? So I think we're definitely going to have a new one in Boston. We're going to have a new one in New York. And I would guess at least 2 or 3 more spots at the end of the season. What do you think? Who do you think is the first one out?
Kansas City, I think it's easy to say just because the expectations were they'd be in wild card race at least, but the injuries, the pitching staff, I don't know if you can put it all on the manager. Vitello, Tony Vitello for the San Francisco Giants, I think is the easy answer there, but I also don't want to overpass AJ Hinch, and it's been a disaster of a season for the Tigers, and he's been there for a while. And I don't know if they're just going to clean house and they trade Skubal, then they need a complete new direction with the manager and so on and so forth. But he's a name people should be keeping on their list.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think Hinch is just so heavily involved. He's very involved with the general manager and makes a lot of the decisions in concert with the front office. My opinion only. I think Hinch is 100% back with the Tigers next season, and he's won a World Series before. Again, my opinion only. I think he returns. Now, as Sam, our producer, he throws this in just to get me angry because I knew this was coming. I didn't know when. I knew it. I look, I didn't know if it would be June or July or August, but here we go. Aaron Boone. Let's fire Aaron Boone again season. Here we are. Aaron Boone, no matter what, Tom, is not getting fired. You can move on from the conversation. If you want to lose some money, then go ahead and put it on something in the prediction markets. For Aaron Boone to lose his job, here's what would have to happen. The Yankees would have to not make the postseason. That's it, right there. I'll tell you right now, Tom. Anything beyond that, Aaron Boone will be back, and he will be with the Yankees next season.
Okay. So this isn't about Aaron Boone, at least this specific predictive market. It's not about Aaron Boone being fired. It's about what date, if you were to choose so, what date would he be out by? And you could choose September 1st of this year, November 15th, presumably after the playoffs, or March 24th of 2027 leading into the start of next year. So you'd be saying, is he going to be out before the season ends? No. If I remember correctly, the Yankees have never made an in-season manager change. Would he be out right after the season ends, or would they have a new manager leading into next season? So that's basically the 3 mile markers that you're looking at. If it would be anyone, it would be the March 24th of 2027. That's when I think would be the safest one to take. But I think Boone will be back. I'm not going to be happy if he's back, but I also don't think that there's a viable replacement at this point.
No, I don't think so either. All right, Home Run Derby. Here are some possible selections over on Kalshi. We know Caminero's in. I mean, it's pretty standard every year to have somebody from Philadelphia in the Home Run Derby. So I would guess either Schwarber or Harper, if not both. The other name now for me, Tom, is Nick Kurtz. I'd be surprised if he did not make an appearance. We know James Wood did it last year. Would he do it again this year? What do you think? Any potential investment options here for Home Run Derby?
This is just for them to be in the Home Run Derby, obviously not to actually win it. I would like to see Hunter Goodman. That's who I think would make a fun selection. Him alongside Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso is willing to do it. For me, I think Matt Olson, no. I think Matt Olson has really taken a step back compared to where he started the season. And I think the Braves and hopefully Matt Olson is thinking that they have higher aspirations than just one more Home Run Derby appearance from Matt Olson. So a no on Matt Olson and a yes on Hunter Goodman.
The National League is so much better than the American League. Does that mean they win the All-Star game, Tom? Like, it's not a guarantee. It is an exhibition. No. But the NL, like, this is... I don't know what the odds will look like, but they'll be the biggest favorite in an All-Star game in a while, I would guess. The NL is just a superior league this year.
Yeah, I would say the NL wins it. I would say they would be pushing towards, minus 140-ish favorite, especially if they have Sanchez on the mound, knowing that you could bring Sanchez, Yamamoto, Mizorowski, Skeens coming out for the NL. I think that's a pretty darn good starting 4 or 5.
We'll be right back with more on Pro Baseball Today. Welcome back to Pro Baseball Today here on SportsGrid as we take a look at the prediction markets over on Kalshi. Players to be traded, Tom. It feels like in the past this was not too early to have this conversation, but in the current state of affairs in baseball with so many teams in it, I mean, there's 30 teams. You can make a case that 20 teams right now are still willing to fight for a wild card spot. I got no idea. So here's where I would start, Tom. Take a look at players that are on 1 year expiring contracts like Luis Arias, on teams that got, arms, bullpen arms for one season. And if they're 15 games under 500 or so, Aroldis Chapman types, then those are the players I think most likely to be moved. Multi-year contracts with this looming CBA, I don't want to have anything to do with it.
It's a very good point. On this list that we're seeing, what is this? 4 of the top 10-ish options are, Boston Red Sox. Aroldis Chapman, Sonny Gray, Wilson Contreras, Jarren Duran. Like, those players should be traded. Just, flatly, those players should be traded with how much Boston is struggling right now. All of them should be moved. Obviously, the CBA complicates things, but Chapman, Arise, Skubal, I think are all yeses. I also think Joe Ryan should be traded from Minnesota. That's a player that other teams will want. Minnesota keeping those players would be a mistake. They're just going to leave at a certain point with the CBA. You're never going to be able to re-sign him. Joe Ryan is a quality pitcher that other teams will want. Get something back for him while you can.
Tariq Skubal's next team. Is it Atlanta? Is it the Dodgers? Is it the Phillies? Who would it be, Tom? I mean, any team could certainly use him, but you have to have the prospect capital to be able to make the trade. I mean, there's some talk that a team would trade for him and then extend him. That's not going to happen. I mean, this is a Scott Boras client. We know that. So this is going into the offseason. But do you have an opinion on this? I mean, I just named the 2 teams I think it's most likely to be. If I am Atlanta, this is the move to make for me. Like, the Dodgers can get him or they could not get him. If Skubal wants to just, join the party here in LA, he certainly can. But I think I think Atlanta should be the team to step up and secure him.
Yeah, Atlanta's really interesting because they're, much further down the list at only, 8% right now on Kalshi. But this is a team that has constantly come up in terms of GMs thinking, or the reports suggesting that GMs are thinking that Atlanta Braves are the dark horse team to kind of swoop in there and get Skubal. And that's going to be something that, we should pay attention to. But it's interesting to see them so far down the list compared to the Dodgers, the Brewers, the Yankees, the Phillies, the Mets, all the way at the top. I would say the Mets are an absolute no at this point. Granted, they do have some high-level prospects that are ready, which is something that the Tigers have indicated that they want. They want, MLB-ready prospects. The Mets do have a number of those players that they could, flip over to the Tigers, but I just don't see it being them. And to your point, Skubal's going to hit free agency. He's going to be out there, and it's going to be a bidding war to get one of the best pitchers in the league.
This is a harder one. Aroldis Chapman's next team. We know he'll probably get traded from Boston, and we know it won't be the Yankees. So he could end up on a number of different teams here, Tom. You just look at some of the postseason teams and then take a guess from there. You mentioned Milwaukee. Obviously, they could use another arm, a dominant closer. I think the Cubs in the same division, by the way, could use some extra arms like Aroldis Chapman too. So this is a little bit of a coin flip guessing game.
I would say it's a no on San Diego. They're not going to be in a spot to compete for the playoffs. And granted, they may be able to offer back a high-level package for him, but that's just not a team where I anticipate him going. Him alongside Uribe in Milwaukee is really interesting. But I think the team that I think has a real shot would be Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is a team that could use another bullpen arm alongside Brian Baker, who has been fantastic, but you're in a spot to compete this year. And if you can get him for a reasonable price, you might as well add him while you can. And when you are leading the division in a spot to have home field advantage going into the playoffs.
Christian Walker, I don't know if Houston ends up moving him. If you would have told me that this would have been his season, Houston would be like, all right, take him as fast as you can, get rid of him. But how can they do that if they're still fighting for the postseason? It looked like a bad contract last year. It looks a lot better this year, Tom. But how can Houston make this move just 2 games back of the wild card? So, look, any team could use power. It's much harder to get value back for a first baseman than it is for any other position because it's generally a position where players have power as well. So you'd have to look at the first base market and who could potentially use a player like this.
Yeah, if you are trading Walker, here's how I would put it. If they trade Walker, that's not the last of their moves. They're going to trade him, and they will trade a number of other players subsequently down the line because that means they're truly selling. But to trade just Walker when you're this close in the race, and granted, we agree that Houston's not going anywhere, but you're still in the race. So either you trade him and you go all in to trade multiple players, or you don't trade him and he stays on Houston.
Yeah, I think Houston stands pat. I think they do very little. All right, we've played this game throughout the spring and the summer. Mike Trout's next team. This is the easiest one for me, Tom, because you can't get this guy by the owner. Like if you couldn't get Ohtani by the owner, there's no way that John Mozeliak or whoever he hires is going to get Mike Trout past Artie Moreno. Like the conversation is going to happen, and then Moreno's going to say no. And then Trout is going to still be on, of course, the Angels, and he hasn't complained about leaving. So, his next team is the team he's on.
I think it's twofold. And the point you just brought up is that Trout has never truly expressed interest, at least to my understanding, that he has never asked to be traded. He's never hinted that he wants to be, on his way out. This is also a player that's been, very quiet and, somewhat out of the spotlight throughout his entire career. There's not a player that has, forced himself to be the centerpiece of baseball. Like, he's been there because of his skill, but he's never been the one pushing his personality forward. He's also never demanded to be traded. So I would say it's going to be the Angels, or one of the options is just retire / no team, because he just spends his entire career there. So it's either Angels or nothing.
As far as winning the World Series, you would think it's the Dodgers or nothing, but that's not what we do here on Pro Baseball Today. We're looking for another option. Let's also not forget the Dodgers were very close to not winning the World Series against the Blue Jays last year if Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is safe at the plate. Can you find me another option here, Tom? It's not going to be anyone in the NL for me. I'm going to try and pivot to somebody in the AL and take a shot.
Yeah, if you were going to pivot to anyone, I would say it would have to be the Rays, and it's just the Rays based on where the market sits, how high they are on the Yankees and the Mariners, collectively. Because if it's not going to be the Yankees, and we're still not super sold on the Mariners, I would say it would be the Rays, and that would be the spot to buy in, because one of those teams is not going to make it, and they're going to drop down. And if the Yankees don't have home field, it puts the Rays in that much better of a spot.
Would agree. All right, let's take a quick break here as we get ready to wrap things up on Pro Baseball Today. We got some news as far as an umpire is concerned. We'll say farewell to one at the end of the season and also recap what happened on July 4th. You're watching Pro Baseball Today on SportsGrid. We'll be right back.
He gives them a chance, but they've got to keep putting people around him. I think he's a very good quarterback. I don't know that he's the one that elevates you all by himself. I think he still needs the help. Excellent player, perfect guy to lead your organization, perfect place for it. And by the way, I'd start him from day one. I wouldn't waste any time on it. But got to put pieces around him, and John Spytek has already started doing that.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo. Only on SportsGrid.
This is the third time he's been medically checked. Even the refs coming over. He's like, dude, like come on. Like after every sort of play in front of the net, the kind of goal he's done. He's on the
jumping.
He's on the turf, like you said, like he's like driving off the top rope. Look at him here again. I give him credit. He's freaking fearless.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Are you ready for el verano más futbolero de tu vida? Latination Football Club turns into Copa Nation, our live stream experience every day de lunes a viernes, 11 a.m. Pacific and 2 p.m. Pacific as well. Checking in after the games. In that slot between games, we got you, my friend. We're going to have celebrities, legends of the game, content creators, and a bunch of our friends that are going to keep you entertained and informed, letting you know what's happening all across the 3 countries that are going to be experiencing this crazy football tournament. Don't miss it. Copa Nation right here on Latin Nation every day. Check it out.
He gives them a chance, but they've got to keep putting people around him. I think he's a very good quarterback. I don't know that he's the one that elevates you all by himself. I think he still needs the help. Excellent player, perfect guy to lead your organization, perfect place for it. And by the way, I'd start him from day one. I wouldn't waste any time on it. But got to put pieces around him, and John Spytek has already started doing that.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio. Only on SportsGrid.
This is the third time he's been medically checked. Even the refs coming over. He's like, dude, like come on. Like after every sort of play in front of the net, the kind of goal he's done. He's
stop jumping.
He's on the turf, like you said, like he's like driving off the top rope. Look at him here again. I give him credit. He's freaking fearless.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Are you ready for el verano más futbolero de tu vida? Latination Football Club turns into Copa Nation, our live stream experience every day, de lunes a viernes, 11 a.m. Pacific and 2 p.m. Pacific as well. Checking in after the games. In that slot between games, we got you, my friend. We're going to have celebrities, legends of the game, content creators, and a bunch of our friends that are going to keep you entertained and informed, letting you know what's happening all across the 3 countries that are going to be experiencing this crazy football tournament. Don't miss it. Copa Nation right here on Latin Nation every day. Check it out.
He gives them a chance, but they've got to keep putting people around him. I think he's a very good quarterback. I don't know that he's the one that elevates you all by himself. I think he still needs the help. Excellent player, perfect guy to lead your organization, perfect place for it. And by the way, I'd start him from day one. I wouldn't waste any time on it. But got to put pieces around him, and John Spytek has already started doing that.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio. Only on SportsGrid.
This is the third time he's been medically checked. Even the refs coming over. He's like, dude, like come on. Like after every sort of play in front of the net, the kind of goal he's done. He's
stop jumping.
He's on the turf, like you said, like he's like driving off the top rope. Look at him here again. I give him credit. He's freaking fearless.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Are you ready for el verano más futbolero de tu vida? Latination Football Club turns into Copa Nation, our live stream experience every day, de lunes a viernes, 11 a.m. Pacific and 2 p.m. Pacific as well. Checking in after the games. In that slot between games, we got you, my friend. We're going to have celebrities, legends of the game, content creators, and a bunch of our friends that are going to keep you entertained and informed, letting you know what's happening all across the 3 countries that are going to be experiencing this crazy football tournament. Don't miss it. Copa Nation right here on Latin Nation every day. Check it out.
He gives them a chance, but they've got to keep putting people around him. I think he's a very good quarterback. I don't know that he's the one that elevates you all by himself. I think he still needs the help. Excellent player, perfect guy to lead your organization, perfect place for it. And by the way, I'd start him from day one. I wouldn't waste any time on it. But got to put pieces around him, and John Spytek has already started doing that.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio. Only on SportsGrid.
This is the third time he's been medically checked. Even the refs coming over. He's like, dude, like come on. Like after every sort of play in front of the net, the kind of goal he's done.
Yeah.
He's
stop jumping.
He's on the turf, like you said, like he's like driving off the top rope. And look at him here again. I give him credit. He's freaking fearless.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Are you ready for el verano más futbolero de tu vida? Latination Football Club turns into Copa Nation, our live stream experience every day, de lunes a viernes, 11 a.m. Pacific and 2 p.m. Pacific as well. Checking in after the games. In that slot between games, we got you, my friend. We're going to have celebrities, legends of the game, content creators, and a bunch of our friends that are going to keep you entertained and informed, letting you know what's happening all across the 3 countries that are going to be experiencing this crazy football tournament. Don't miss it. Copa Nation right here on Latin Nation every day. Check it out.
You of something and you don't deny it, there's a reason you didn't deny it, because you kind of feel like they got me, and yes, I'm not going to tell you I did it, but I did it. Don't you think so?
The Craig Carton Show. Only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here. I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs.
All right, folks, welcome to another edition of Outspoken. I'm Dan Cilio, and I hope everyone had a spectacular 4th of July celebrating the 250th anniversary of America. Fireworks yesterday were absolutely awesome. All the sports going on, too. What storylines we had this week. The World Cup has just galvanized America.